Museum. It's great that you're here. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Jack Green. I'm the Jeffrey Horrell 75 and Rodney Rose Director and Chief Curator of the Miami University Art Museum. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here today for this great event. This is in conjunction with the current installation of the 2021 Department of Art Faculty and Alumni exhibition. And this event is in collaboration between the Art Museum and the Contemporary Art Forum, which Annie is involved with, as well as Tracy Featherstone, other faculty. It's wonderful to have people here from the Contemporary Art Series, which is a wonderful collaboration. Would encourage you to see the exhibition if you haven't seen it already, and it's on exhibit through December 11th. So you have a chance to see it, and also we'll be open this Saturday as well, if you want to come by to the museum. But before I begin, because we need to acknowledge where we're standing today, and also think about some of the events that have taken place this week on the Miami University campus related to the Miami tribe, and also our place within that, these events that have recently happened. So first of all, the Miami University Art Museum, we respectfully acknowledge the Shawnee and Miami people who, along with other indigenous people, were the stewards of the land that we now occupy. But also, we need to recall this event that happened this week, which was on Monday, the Day of Reflection, which started here at the Art Museum in the Sculpture Park, next to the sculpture by Eugene Brown. This was the Day of Reflection, which was organized through the Miami Center here at Miami University. And I think around 300 people participated in this Day of Reflection, which is marking the 175th anniversary of the removal of the Miami tribe from these lands that we're on right now. Around 330 people were removed on October 11th, around that date in 1846. And so for those of us who participated in that event, I know personally I found it a very moving and humbling experience. It allows us to think about our place and where we are right now, and also the future, where we're going. But I want to go back to tonight's program now, and it's my pleasure. I will introduce Jason Shaman in a moment, but first I want to announce a couple of events that are coming up. One is our own event here at the Art Museum. Our next talk in this series is a virtual lunchtime talk on October 26th, on Tuesday, and that's at noon, and it's an artist talk, Influences and Evolutions. Artist is David Johnson and also Mike May. So please tune in online for that event, and it will also be video available as a video subsequently. And also I want to highlight the next Contemporary Art Forum lecture, which is Logan Dandridge, which is going to be on October 21st, and that's at 5:50 p.m. and in Art 100. I urge you to take a look at our visual arts magazine, which is also online, so you can check out information about the Contemporary Art Series. Now, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jason Shaman, our curator of exhibitions, who will introduce our speakers and the program tonight. So thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. It's great to have you all here. It's exciting to have people in the museum. You know, what we've been through the past year and a half. Thank you for making the time. Again, I wanted to echo thank you to Tracy Featherstone, who organizes the Contemporary Art Forum. So the students that are here in that class, but we're also thrilled to have community members, former faculty, our dean, our chair of the Department of Art. So thank you, Rob, again, for the collaboration in putting the exhibition together. So again, if you haven't had a chance to see it, we've got 64 works covering 50 years worth of alumni faculty that are included. So it's really exceptional. But I would like to, my pleasure actually, to introduce our speakers and our moderator for this evening's program. Just keep in mind, especially for the students of Contemporary Art Forum, stick around afterwards because the big question will be available for you as that breakout. So don't go anywhere. Others who are here, you're welcome to stick around as well. So Robert Wolfe received his BFA. Oops, let me turn that on. There we go. So Robert Wolfe received his BFA in 1952 and a BS in 1955 from Miami University, followed by an MFA received in 1960 from the University of Iowa. In 1963, after additional studies at the Cincinnati Art Academy and at the Tamarind Institute in New Mexico, which is exceptionally well known for printmaking, Wolfe came to Miami University to teach printmaking until his retirement in 1990. He was honored by the governor of Ohio and the Ohio Arts Council, as well as being a recipient of the Miami Effective Educator Award. So kudos for that. That's an amazing honor. Sarojini Johnson worked with artist and educator Robert Wolfe when she was his student while she was earning her MFA in printmaking, which she received in 1984. She has taught intaglio printmaking at Ball State University since 1985. Johnson's been making intaglio prints continually and currently has added artist books to her repertoire, which is her work that's featured in the current installation. Thematically, her works are inspired by the natural world and the adverse effects of climate change on flora and fauna. Our moderator this evening is Taulbee, the director of the Hiestand Galleries here at Miami University. Taulbee organizes national and international visiting artist exhibitions, as well as MFA and BFA degree exhibitions, and coordinates the YEC competitions in painting and sculpture. Before coming to Miami, she was the associate professor and the director of the Merwin and Wakely Galleries at Illinois Wesleyan University and director of the Network Project at the Cranbrook Art Academy of Art in Michigan. So thank you, Annie, for moderating this evening. Thank you, Sarojini and Bob.
Great.
Turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. And hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here, and I was honored to be asked to be a part of this. Professor Robert Wolfe was my mentor. I graduated from the Department of Art in 1981, and I have so much to thank him for the printmaking ability that I had when I left here. It was really momentous for me when I went to my graduate study at University of Massachusetts, where I was knowledgeable in so much and didn't realize it truly at the time. But printmaking is that fabulous medium where it really transcends both the traditional and what is next. There's always this new kind of interjection of technology that sort of enters in to what is so pleasingly, beautifully traditional. And I'm so glad to be here and to be a part of this. Sarojini and I met in 1983, I think, when I was home on holiday. And it's just been a pleasure to know these two beautiful individuals. And I hope that you will enjoy their conversation tonight. Thank you for joining us. Sarojini. So we're going to have a conversation tonight about your relationship with Professor Robert Wolfe and some of those momentous and fabulous interactions that you've had together. I know for these many decades now. Seems to go by very fast, doesn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah, so I don't know where you would like to get started. If Bob, would you like to start with something tonight?
Well, from what has been said, it seems as if one begins teaching prints, sort of like you just appear on the spot, and there it is. But there's experiences that go before that, which you all as students will endure as well. In fact, my first experience with Miami printmaking is actually in 1948. When I was in a beginning theory class, art theory and color theory, with a remarkable teacher named Morpha Webster, who managed to take the particular design course that she taught and introduce each of the major areas of that the art department sponsored in as a design problem. And for prints, she very cleverly tossed out pieces of battleship linoleum, some cutting tools, some paper, and we did a print. And she talked about the positive, negative effects, the light and dark, the quality of edges, and as well, and as well, is that all right now? Too loud? Am I doing all right now?
Yes.
And as well, there was even a course in screen printing, which was rather unusual at that time to be taught in a university. And she was interesting because she not only wanted you to know what was happening in contemporary art, or at the time we were in class or at students at Miami, but she had a project that we were to research a piece of art from another period and another culture and another time, and to recreate that as a silkscreen print. And what that meant was taking a color that we noticed from reproductions, of course, take the color apart and then reassemble it and print it. And my little side, the print that I did was actually from Egyptian wall painting of a group of dancers. And in a student show that we had, I think at the time in 1948, it was the first print I ever sold. And I think I got Bob White of the Oxford Press, bought it for $3. So we have come up in the world a bit. Now, after that, once you finish your undergraduate work, my experience actually was I worked as an artist illustrator for the Army for 2 years, which didn't have much to do with prints, but it showed you what you needed to do if you were going to work with art processes. Then after that, I taught in Cincinnati for a while, and then did graduate work at the University of Iowa with Professor Lasansky. Now, when I finished that, I was offered the job teaching at Penn State University, or let's see, no, one of the big colleges in Pennsylvania at the time, and also the position at Miami in 1963. And in my interview with Ed Fullwider, who was the department chair at the time, he mentioned that not only would I be expected to teach intaglio printing, which I studied at Iowa, but also relief printing and lithography as silkscreen printing. So in lithography, I had never had a course in lithography. And I thought, what do you do? But as an artist, there are things that you must do. I applied for research grants at the University of Cincinnati, or at the Art Academy of Cincinnati. And they very kindly gave it to me if I would take care of the print lab for the summer. And so fortunately, at the time, Garo Andresian, who was probably one of the foremost lithographers of the country at the time, was teaching painting there. And so I signed up for a painting class, but he taught me lithography instead, which worked out very well. So my other source of information, other than one semester at the Art Academy in Cincinnati, was a book written by Bolton Brown, which I think was the only the only source of information of lithography. And so I arrived in 1963 at Miami with that experience, major experience with intaglio printing, some experience with relief printing, and I guess adequate printing and lithography. So that's why I was here and how things got started. Now it might be, well, I could go on a little bit with explaining the situation. When I arrived at Miami, I came because they wanted to develop the print program here a bit. And at the time, I think there were maybe between 3 and 7 students taking print classes. And the thing that is difficult, what do you do in order to encourage a student to take prints? I've had one student in my entire teaching career that came to take my first level print classes. And she had traveled with her family in Spain and saw the Picasso prints in Barcelona. Now that's a pretty good reference, but not many students do. The only other experience is that first lady that taught us how to do relief prints and silkscreen prints. And that introduction to prints then leads you to an interest in printmaking, which can continue on. If those courses, if you don't have experience with those courses, where do you come from? Where do our students come from? You try to see a print or to show prints, but we don't know what your experiences are. And you maybe, when I first started, I think the major interest was to go into art education, where the story was you could always get a job teaching if you couldn't do it. The next was that you could go into commercial art. And of course, then you could get a job if you managed to get through that program. But to encourage people to be a printmaker, to be an artist, was something else indeed. And so I think I will toss this back to you all, since you have become the artists and know how this has developed,
Right.
and what needs to be done.
Yeah. Well, Bob has such an amazing legacy here at Miami, but there were so many students that went through the printmaking program here that went on to get their MFAs, that actually went on to teach at many of the universities in the country. And so there's a great respect for that time at Miami, when that people were going out there and representing the university and meeting with different generations of artists. I mean, we're just 2 of them, but there are many of the Miami alums that are maybe retired by now, but that learned so much. And I think part of that too was, I remember being in the studio and you were always there. Every night you were there making work and swinging the copper plate and engraving. And you were just always there for all of us. And it was really a great community. And
that you mentioned I was there at night. Yes.
Yes, at night.
It's difficult to associate yourself if you're really interested in what the students are doing and the discipline. When I first started at Miami, the building was locked at 6 o'clock, and you could not work in the lab after 6. I had a confrontation with the university security, and they threatened to arrest me and to take me into my department chair, which I thought, well, you have to do this because, you can't interrupt a student who is doing an edition of a print and then tell them to leave and come back and start it at 8 o'clock the next morning. So you have to put yourself on the line to say, yes, this needs to be done in order to have an effective program. And so not only do you talk to the department chair, but you also have to talk to the university security as well. So we got the building open all night. People worked all night together, and it was really wonderful.
Yes.
I might mention too, you mentioned the students. One of the things that I noticed that was very particular about the Miami printmakers, that very often with other disciplines, that there's this kind of secrecy that's involved with what they're doing. I had a friend at the Chicago Art Institute that was being considered for a very important scholarship. And there were 3 of the students there, and they found a studio and locked them in the studio so nobody could see what they were doing and they couldn't talk to anyone else. But at Miami students, if I would go in the lab, I could see students that were willing to help each other. whether it was working the presses
Mhm.
or whether it was offering ideas and suggestions that they had discovered on their own. There was no sense about secrecy about what we're doing. We're all working for this together. And I think that was one of the things that made the project or the whole program very successful.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I mean, the collaborative efforts that were going on, and we learned so much from each other and had great support and lovely chili suppers in the studio. And we would hide from security at night so we could work just past midnight. So those were magical times for me as a student.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just need to say something before I forget it, that when I first went to teach at Ball State, you gave me one bit of advice. And that was, you told me to work in the lab myself, because you said then a community could be formed.
Mhm.
And I do look fondly about working with other students, seeing you every night. If we pulled a print, we knew we could show you that print that evening. And getting that immediate feedback was so important.
Mhm.
Well, it's not only with the feedback of working together, but doing that, but getting together. Well, one of my experiences with students, I think Bill Green was part of the project there, that working late at night until the studio closed, there was a bakery uptown and they would sell us leftover stuff for a nickel. So we could go up and have a midnight snack. And all of us that were working in the lab, or else I think there was also a system that with the university, the kitchen at the university dorm there, that someone would go over, and if they had leftover pieces of pie, they would sell it to us for a nickel, and we could come back to the lab and then have a critique and have treats that way. So the other thing too is that not only that business with each other that was so important, and working, feeding off of each other, as it were, with ideas, that going to exhibitions and going to see museum collections and to participating in competitions and exhibitions is very important as well. I remember Mary Lou Baskett at the Cincinnati Art Museum, who was the curator of prints, made her prints available to us when we wanted. She would get out prints from their collection to show us the great prison series of Piranesi. She got them all out for us to see, because she thought, as a student, as a group of students, print students, we should know what those prints were like, and it was a revelation. To see, to enter competitions was important as well, and that students from the Miami lab could take prints that they had done in the Miami lab and send them to competitions and to receive awards and recognition that way. It was remarkable as well. And so, if one has a sense of pride, one feels that that's where the pride is.
Yes.
One of the things that I cannot forget is the very first day I came to visit you at the lab in Miami. And here on the wall, we have the print that you had just finished.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. But he got out all of the proofs. And this is a large print. I think it's 2 foot by 3.
It's
Very large.
yeah.
Very impressive. And he got out all the prints and explained that this was a print of his horse, an Appaloosa, which I was vague on what that was. And
Crazy.
name was Crazy, his horse Crazy. And then he mentioned that he had 4 horses. He might as well have told me he had 4 dragons, because I was just it was so astonishing to me that somebody had horses and that they drew the horse and then created a print. But what I also can't forget is in the past, in my undergraduate, my professors were very accomplished, but they never shared their process with me. And so to see this, it was just a formative experience for me. And he also showed me prints that he had done that were inspired by travels. I believe you had been then to former Yugoslavia and had created this green, do you remember that green wave?
I think, yes,
I can't forget the color. I think of that color to this day. So I was so impressed with the work itself and just with the generosity of spirit that you had.
well, and what I could step back into the Prince Lab again, as to when I arrived, one might describe what the Prince Lab was like, which would give you a little bit of information to. There was a wonderful press there, a big black thing that I hardly knew what it was for. It was a Washington press, and it was for printing relief prints. And it had been built, it had been put together about, I think, I'm not sure, I could defer to David, it was about, I think about 1850 or 1830. But it was one of the great presses that was ever designed. And it was listed with the Library of Congress as one of being the few Washington presses that was still functioning in the United States at the time. So that we could keep a press like that going really gave me a sense of pride in what could be done with printmaking. Ed Fullwiler, which I mentioned previously, was also a wonderful person to have as a department chair. He had taught lithography, and he had gone to Cincinnati, which used to be one of the lithography centers of the country. And there was one of the print shops that was closing, and he had them give Miami one of the presses that was used. And that press had also been built somewhere around probably about 1880. And as well, he managed to get them to give us a whole group of Bavarian limestones, which was the way lithography was invented by Alois Senefelder in the late 1700s. And so he brought all of that to Miami, and we had it, that was in the lab to use. And of course, then for Intaglio, it was a great shock. There was a small little table press that had a bed about 12 inches wide and 14 inches long. And of course, that limited the scale of the print that you could do. Nothing like this could be done on that. You could do a little thing like this, which was probably greeting card or calling card. But I managed to get a press designed by Andrew Rush, a student from Miami or from the University of Iowa. And we bought, it was a floor press, but the bed size with that was about 3 feet by 6 feet. And then we got the very grand old orange press, which was designed by a man named Glenn Alps. And so you sort of learn about these kind of things. And at a conference, I was having breakfast with this wonderful, interesting gentleman. And his name was Glenn Alps, and he told me about the press. So I worked with the university administration, I don't know for how many years, in order to get that press as a part of our working mechanism in the prints department.
And it's still there today, making
Still there,
prints.
still
Yes.
working.
Well, should we look through some of these images and have you use them as a prompt to tell us some things?
All right, if you like. And if you have any questions, just interrupt. And I have some difficulty hearing, but I have translators here that will help me.
So the first image was one of your Intaglio etching an aquatint. And this image is an engraving.
Yes.
And now let's look at, who was this man?
Well, this gentleman is Mauricio Lazansky, who taught prints for, I don't know, 50 years at the University of Iowa. He was a remarkable man. He received Guggenheim fellowships repeatedly to study in Europe. He also studied with Stanley William Hayter at the Atelier 17 in Paris. And when I went to study with Lazansky, I had thought a prints program, a master's degree would be a year and a half. I thought maybe then 2 years. It turned out to be a 3-year program. You didn't finish up in less than 3 years. And so you got to know the instructor that way. He was not, he was from Argentina originally. And the dictator there, he was an educator in Argentina, and the dictator had heard about what he was doing and felt it was a little bit dangerous for someone to be as well known as an artist. And so he went to France, and then he came to the university. He talked to someone and wanted to know the most American place that he could go to teach. And someone said, go to Iowa, they raise corn there. So he came to Iowa and stayed. And at the same time, though, Grant Wood was teaching there as well, which is interesting. And Who were the other teachers at Iowa at the time, David? The contemporary artists, what?
Guston.
Yep. So anyway, the program that he established was very demanding. And I can say from experience, you didn't get away with anything. I mean, I remember working on a print and it was a figurative print, and it was a sort of stylized portrait of one of my sisters, or two of my sisters. And he recommended a procedure that I should follow. And I was determined to be independent and wouldn't do it. I don't think he spoke to me in 2 months or more. I finally did it, and he walked by and said, "I told you to do that. You have saved a lot of time." And it was true. This is another print, that a Lasansky print, an early one. And I don't remember the name now, but I always was very fond of it. But he seemed to be an expressionist, romantic expressionist of some sort, that managed to get all of this sort of this inner feeling and romance of, and also a sense of anxiety in the print that something's happening that you want to know about. And so it doesn't do just to pass by the print, but you have to study it and really look at it in order to appreciate it and know what it's about. That's the lab there. I'm not there, but that's the Iowa lab.
And that's Lasansky pulling.
Yes,
that
in the
print.
middle, that's he pulling a print. You call that, when I mentioned that in some writing I did here about pulling a proof. And this is an intaglio print, and you put the inked plate on the bed of the press, you run it through with great pressure. And then when it goes through, you remove the felts and you pull the paper up, and it's called pulling a proof. And it becomes a revelation, because very often the image is reversed. You see things that you had never seen before in the work that you had done. And so pulling a proof like that, whether it's with a woodblock or whether it's with a screen print or whether it's with an intaglio print, or it's really a phenomenon and a thing that you don't forget very easily.
Do you remember this painting?
I do remember the painting. I have an argument with the University of Iowa about this painting. I haven't confronted them about it, but my third year, I worked very hard, and I got to be president of the student art group there. And I was working, I think it included cleaning up the gallery that they had. So I was in the gallery one day, and a delivery truck arrived with a big roll of something, of fabric that was about, I don't know how big it is, about 6 feet long. And it was rolled up and covered with burlap. And the man who was chair of the department said, "I don't have time now. Open it up and see what it is." I started unrolling it, and it was this Jackson Pollock that was there. And I was absolutely speechless, because, what do I do with the Jackson Pollock painting? Now they claim it came in other ways, but I helped unroll it when it came to the University of Iowa.
And it's worth, I think, it's pretty much priceless.
Well, it is priceless. The last I heard, it was something like over 25 million. But so I was fondling it with pleasure at the time.
Okay, who's this man? Stanley William Hayden.
Well, that's somebody I have met only at a later time, and actually looked better when I knew him than he does there. That's Stanley William Hayden, right?
Yeah.
And he has this Atelier 17 in Paris, where most printmakers of stature actually went through Hayter's Atelier 17. Picasso had worked there. Brock worked there. Lasansky worked there. Sid Chaffetz, a great woodblock printer from Ohio State, worked there. I didn't, unfortunately, but I had 2 students, or 3 or 4 students, that worked with Hayter after they left Miami, rather than doing graduate school. And there was a print council newsletter that came out, and someone sent me one. And there was an article by Hayter that gave me a chance of boast a little more than I sometimes do, was that he didn't know what happened, but there were students from Miami, University in Ohio, that came from a small college that knew what they needed to know in order to be successful at his atelier. So anyway, I can't take credit for that. The students that went there deserve the credit. I don't. But he came to he came to Miami and didn't do demonstrations, but talked about the printmaking processes and the people that he had worked with. And it was really a revelation. He arrived at Miami. I'll tell a little story here. I had to go meet him at the airport in Cincinnati. I was driving a sad little car, but he came and he arrived with tennis. He was in his 80s at the time. He arrived with his tennis rackets and a case of gin and his girlfriend, Desiree. And so I had to find, I'd made arrangements for him at the Alumni Center down here. And when I arrived and the hostess came out and said, "Oh, we were all prepared for you, Mr. Hayter, but we didn't expect Mrs. Hayter." And she said, "Just call me Desiree." So it was very charming. And of course, this you know about, you can talk about him.
Well, one of the things that I remember so vividly about being your student was how you would talk about the work of other artists. And this is one of the most influential intaglio prints, and I think we were all influenced by it.
You know,
This one you used to show.
well, that one, you know, this one, I always thought of this print by Picasso as one of the most important prints that has ever been done, you know, even, you know, the Rembrandt, the Goyas, whatever. But when the thing that happens with Picasso print is that it's not the subject, but the meaning of it. And it was what was done to the village in Spain that was bombed by Franco. And he manages to tell you about that with a small child with a candle with hope still. And also relating it, I think, to the bullfight in Spain, you know, that how it was part of the Spanish culture. And so he did that, as well as showing the negative parts of the life, as well as the positive part as well, that you still have hope.
This next slide, I was introduced to the work of Naoko Matsubara.
Yeah.
Basically, you have one of her prints, and you used to talk about her visiting.
Oh, well, actually, relief prints, you know, mainly with linoleum blocks or wood block prints, you don't hear too much about it now, or you didn't now a little more than before. But Cross and Curry, who was a faculty here, was a very wonderful woodblock printer. And so he and I talked about how we could do something. We organized, I guess we organized a show for the Hiestand Gallery of artists whose major work was done into the relief processes. And Naoko Matsubara was one of the major woodblock printers she studied with, who was a Japanese printmaker. Munakata, yes. She was his favorite and most promising student. And she came, or she did a print. We did a little catalog. I still have some. I should bring them over so you could all have some. I asked each person to do a 4x4 print, and with a single color, so we could have it printed, and it would be a catalog of original prints. Well, I had a fellow faculty from the University of Illinois that was going to do it, but he didn't do it as original prints, but it's a beautiful catalog nonetheless. And Matsubara sent a 3-color print instead. So she was, but she had a wonderful sense of style, you know, and it comes out in her prints. It's sort of like a casualness of just working is effortlessly, and what she wanted to show, it just sort of came. And it wasn't a matter of I'm torturing myself to get this image out. It was just there. And it was, all of her prints seemed to be pretty much in that regard. So I always had a great respect for her in that sense. As well as I have seen her come to opening and receptions with the most fantastic wardrobe that I've ever noticed.
Okay, speaking of fantastic, do you remember Margaret Humphrey and the show you put up in the Hiestand Gallery?
What's that?
You had installed her exhibition in the Hiestand Gallery. She sent us a
Yeah.
portfolio of prints and you put
Yeah.
them in the gallery.
Yeah, well, Margot Humphrey is an African-American printmaker. And actually, I think it's mainly lithography that she works with. And I don't know that she prints the prints herself much, but she did most of the work at Tamron Institute. And they're remarkable in terms of amount of color and things. I think there's one in the collection here of pencils that we managed to get some money together to buy for the collection. And
here's another one of her
Yeah.
images.
she lives in Oakland, California. I don't know if she's still teaching. She would teach, and then she was very independent, and she would teach for a while and then become disillusioned with her situation and leave, and then be doing wonderful prints and then start teaching again.
And while we were at Miami, while I was at Miami, we had the most amazing visiting artists in every possible discipline. This is Duane Michaels, and he came and talked to us. I think he was a little bit mean to me.
What's that?
I think he was a little bit mean to me. I tried to ask a question and I don't think he liked it.
Who was it?
Duane Michaels.
Duane Michaels.
But wonderful photographs.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I would talk a little bit about Intaglio. Are most of you aware of what it is or how a plate is made, or do you care at all? Or okay, you do. Okay, so here's a plate, a copper plate, and here's a print from that. So one of the things when you work in this medium is there is a lot to grapple with, a lot of technical information, and a lot of there are a lot of muscle memory in terms of working with with paper, working with presses. And the thing I really want to say is I thought I knew something about Intaglio when I came to Miami, but Professor Wolfe took me from crayons to perfume, as it would be, because he really shared a lot of secrets with me. As he talked earlier about secrets, and he used to say, Sarojini, don't worry about keeping any secrets. Nobody would possibly in their right mind do what you do to create one of your prints. Normally, to make color, you have to make a separate plate for every color. Sometimes I create a key plate and then put more than one color on a plate. But I thought maybe some of you were wondering, how are these things made? Because often people do ask about that. And here's an example of how it's actually printed. These are just some these next few shots, just to give you a clue of how you have to ink and then put things through a press. And there's the final. And you hope, and if you have an audience, then you hope that things are all lined up and registered, because it's awfully embarrassing if it isn't. I'm at Interlochen in this photograph, and you remember John McCoig?
Oh, yes.
He's another one of. He invited David and I up to
Was
work.
he it there?
He was for many years, and then he is now. I think he's at Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania, teaching printmaking. But he was a wonderful teacher, and he asked us to do a demo, and that's always, it's sort of like kind of like a cooking demonstration, but worse, because everybody's watching and
Waiting.
yeah, they're watching, and look in the back, this person is staring at the and then I'll talk to you about this print, because this was one of the first prints I made with you in your lab. And I think you should always tell a secret to your audience because that makes it very exciting. But Mr. Wolfe fixed the feet on my cats. And thank God he did, because this was one of my big prize winners. So I owe you. I owe you.
There was a little cheating of drawing on the print.
I made this print and it was a huge dilemma. Do you remember how you had to help me untangle the pigs from the fence?
No,
But you did. I think I was distraught and you had to help me figure out how to get them to look right. I met my life partner here at Miami, David Johnson. Raise your hand, Dave. He came to Miami University a year after I was here. And he came, I like to say he came with a radio, a suitcase, and a lot of big ideas. So here he is. Here, this is our lab at Ball State. Here he is signing a whole edition of prints. And he also does intaglio prints. Some people think it's remarkable that both of us are teaching, well, he just retired, but both of us taught at Ball State for over 30 years. And we both do the same thing, which is, I think, a little unusual. But this is one of my favorite pieces of his. He also works in color intaglio. And can you talk about the glow of color? And you do that so well. You talk about the glow of color in color intaglio.
well, the fact that in the color intaglio, usually the inks that we use are mixed with an oil, and it's a fine, very finely ground pigment, and the pigment is suspended in the oil, and you don't notice it until you have lived with it for a long time, that the light sort of penetrates that surface and glows back. It's different from silkscreen print when you lay down the flat surface of the print and the light hits the flat surface of the screen print, the top surface, and it reflects back. But intaglio, it sort of moves in among the pigment that's put down. Speaking of David, by the way, I might mention that you might notice sometimes I must defer if I have forgotten a date or give an incorrect identification. He's very helpful in correcting me, by the way.
Here's another one of his images, and he's very much interested in drawing, history of prints, history of art. Basically, that's what he does all day long, reading books, running to the studio, working. He's a very eccentric character. Anybody have any questions at this point or anything you'd like to know?
We'd like to sort of open up.
Well,
everything.
let me mention something else that's another part of printmaking that there are such things as print studios like the Tamarind Institute and others around the country in New York and well, all over, and where famous artists go to work. In fact, Louise Nevelson and Joan Mitchell well, Louise Nevelson I'll talk about. She came to Oxford to get an honorary degree from Western College. And I went to hear her give a brief talk. And interestingly, she mentioned that she was being deserved. I asked what she was doing for the evening, and she said she has nothing planned. So I called print students together on a print line, I guess it were, and they all came to my studio. And Louise Nevelson told us about her experience in printmaking. She worked at the Tamarind Institute, and though she was there constantly doing the drawings on the plates or on the stones, and a master printer was doing the prints for her. But she had absolute say in terms of what she wanted done. And the printer, Don Kelly, I think, worked with her once, that she was, and the prints are absolutely very good or very wonderful to watch or to look at. But she drew on the matrix, she drew on the stone, she drew on the plates, but she didn't do the printing at all, and the master printer. But there are people actually that go to workshops, and some of the technical people actually do recreate from the images that are presented to them. But the artist has to be there constantly for the approval of what is being done. One of my students, actually, Rebecca Snelker, she went to the Tamron Institute to study to be a master printer. In fact, she was the first woman master printer from the Tamron Institute, and probably the first woman master printer in the United States. She did wonderful work. She stayed on, and she became the quality control curator of the Tamron Institute. And every print that was printed at the Tamron Institute, Rebecca looked at to see if it was a print that was perfect. If it was not, she tore it up.
She would stamp the print. She was the one that did
What's that?
the stamping of the Tamron seal
Yeah,
of the font. Barb Tolen was a person that was.
I'm sorry.
Barb Tolen
Oh, yes.
was a didn't she study, wasn't she at Tamron before she came here as a graduate student?
No, she was, I think, at Drake University.
Oh, okay.
No, but
thought
she
she had some
she
kind
was a wonderful,
Tamron.
I mean,
yeah.
I envied her, all of her abilities to do litho washes and things of that
Yes.
sort. She was, I don't know where, I think she went to
Yeah.
teach at Drake
Yeah.
again.
She was lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
Ellen had a question.
Yes, we have opening up things for questions, please.
But if you guys don't want me to ask.
No, no, no.
that's okay. Really, it isn't. Okay. Well, I've had two questions, so that's not good. But
No, I had, you mean before I came to Miami?
forever.
No, I invented, recently I did a couple glass things.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah,
Yeah, that you can etch on glass. and
Yeah.
print it as a copy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
great, I forgot that.
Mhm.
And Professor Wolfe, I just wanted to, the print collection at the Art Museum is very rich with print because Becky Schnelker, as the curator, the quality control curator, she would get a print of every series that was printed there. And we're talking prints that sell for
Mhm.
thousands of dollars. And she donated, we have a huge Jim Donne self-portraits,
Mhm.
portrait in Black Grease, a number of great prints
Mhm.
are there from Becky Schnelker.
Yeah.
And I understand your class also that you use money from print sales to buy prints and
Mhm.
donate to the collection. They have a fabulous print
Right.
collection here. And you-
Yeah, I remember as a student, we would have print sales in the upper level of Shriver Center. And we would, part of those sales from our print editions would go to purchase a print for the collection here at the Art Museum when it opened before that, but the Art Museum opened in 1978.
right,
Yeah.
When you can get fabulous prints
Mhm.
for much, much less
Yes.
money than you can now. So you're
Yeah.
very smart to buy
Yeah.
prints. and
But no,
build up the
It's
collection.
a lot to do with those sales of prints from students.
I'm sorry, I'll have to repeat it. I didn't hear
From
that.
the sales of the prints for the students.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that we had those big print sales.
Yeah.
We'd mat all of our prints and we'd cover them with acetate. It would be like a
And sold,
marathon.
sold several thousands of dollars worth of
Yes,
prints. And
yes,
the students contributed 10% back to the purchase of
yes,
a print that would be important in terms of helping in technical processes primarily,
right.
And
Yeah.
so actually many of them were people that were teaching prints in other universities.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it also gave you a chance to see what was being done in other places.
Right. Alumni would send prints for the sale. So there would be, current students and current graduate students, and then alumni from all over the country would send prints for the sale.
Yeah.
Yes. And Bob would organize all that. Yeah. Any other questions from the audience tonight?
Well, now it's mainly a group of, the course is contemporary art.
Contemporary Art Forum. It's a course that students in the department, undergraduate students, studio students repeat it 3 times. All students have to take it at least once, but many students come off for all 8 semesters to
Uh-huh.
hear wonderful artists like you and Sarojini speak.
Well,
So-
the thing that I'm always curious, and in teaching and talking and whatever, what is distinctive about the prints, not only as being a print, but also a print of quality? I mean, what do you look for?
Mm.
I mean, is it just something that, I mean, do you have specific criteria that you can identify? I don't know who I'm asking. It's just something I can't answer myself. So I'm looking for information.
Right.
No. Or I guess what I can say is this is a problem that you'll be confronted with. What is a significant print, and what is an original print, and what is a print of quality? You could say, what does it mean? Is it merely an object of technical virtuosity, or does it really say something rather than being merely descriptive? And one of my points always was that it's not difficult to make a work that describes something, but it's difficult to make a work that has a significant meaning, and to identify that meaning as apart from the subject is really tough. Try it.
So,
I mean, you could try it with this. I mean, that has meaning beyond the fact that it's a cow. I won't ask David to say what it is, but that's our job. I could, but I won't.
Right. So if we're not, are we ready for the big question?
Sure.
Would you like to, do you have the big question? Do you wanna-
No, I'll defer to you all right now.
No, you mean that we were going to ask the audience?
Yes, the
Well,
big
that was sort of
question.
my question, actually,
Oh.
was what I just said.
Oh, okay.
And I was pointing out how difficult it is. Is the time to go?
Yes.
I was pointing out how difficult it is to answer some of the questions, but I could toss that question out. What are your criteria for not merely prints, but actually for contemporary work? I mean, if it's a matter of rebelling against what has been done before, I mean, that's not too difficult to work out. But what are the criteria that you use?
Jason, are we all set? Well, I want to thank Professor Robert Wolfe and Sarojini Johnson for tonight. It was a lovely conversation and so inspiring in so many ways. And thank you all for joining us tonight. Have a good night.